Big an underdog as they are in this game tonight.
You could not have scripted a better start here for the Lakers.
SGA right around Smart, sees three, put it in anyway!
Austin Reeves continues to struggle offensively.
There goes SGA, LaRavia for two.
McCann knocks down another three. We just try to make
Game one, they've in fact won 6 straight games going back to Game 7 of last year's finals in the playoffs, tied with their 2012 playoff run for the longest winning streak since they moved from Seattle to OKC. Meanwhile, out east, back here, we have Game 2 of the Sixers and Knicks tonight. Knicks on a historic run of their own. After trailing 2-1 to the Hawks in round 1, they've won 4 straight by an average of 33 points per game, and they are favored by 6.5 in tonight's Game 2 against Philadelphia. And as usual, it's been Jalen Brunson igniting the flame, scoring 35 or more in each of his last 5 playoff games against Philly, tying the longest streak against the Sixers in NBA history, tied with Michael Jordan, by the way. And you can't forget Karl Anthony Towns, who's averaging nearly 19 points, 11 rebounds, and 6 assists in the playoffs, on pace to be the second Knick to average 15, 10, and 5 in a postseason. The other was Jerry Lucas in 1972. So teams that win Game 1 of a best-of-7 series go on to win that series 75% of the time. Good news for the Knicks. They won Game 1 of their series against Atlanta. Sixers, of course, didn't win Game 1 of their series with Boston, so those stats can go either way. Windman, we've had a day to sleep on it. We look ahead to tonight. Knicks and Sixers in Game 2. What are you watching for early?
Well, they're on a generational offensive run here. If they continue to execute at this level, not only with their actual, togetherness and plays, but just their shot making, I don't know if anybody's going to touch them. Jalen Brunson has shot 63% over the last 3 games. Karl Towns has 4 consecutive games where he's had 6 or more assists. A couple of them he's been in the double digits. Nobody's talking about OG Anunoby. Do you know what OG Anunoby's stats are in this postseason so far in 7 games, Greeny? How about 21 points on 64% shooting, 60% from three-point range? This is a killer offensive machine right now. It will not last at this level, but Philly's going to have to really pull him back to be able to get for the next 6 games.
So Monica does the Knick games on radio for those of you across the country who do not know. Game 1 was a very one-sided affair. The Sixers looked tired, and everything could not have gone worse for them. What will you be watching for closely early tonight to see if it's going to be different?
Joel Embiid versus Karl Anthony Towns and Mitchell Robinson. And here's why, Greeny. For all of the wonderful gaudy stats that Wendy just mentioned, Joel Embiid at 35%, 50%, whatever you want to call it, put 3 fouls on both of them by halftime. And for me, that is of great concern. Now, if you want to go into deep cuts, Ariel Hug-Porty off the bench came in, gave you some great minutes, whatever. But the issue is Karl Anthony Towns, as Wendy mentioned, has been such an important part of that offensive firepower. He has to be able to stay on the floor.
What do you think of this, Michael Wilbon, the Embiid factor? He looked just spent.
He was shot.
Expectedly so.
He's going to bounce back. And he only played 26 minutes, I think, in Game 1. Nick Nurse, understood where this was going early enough to keep all those guys into 26 minutes good. Because they're going to have to deal with Karl Anthony Towns, but reverse order, Jalen Brunson. They cannot give up a 35-point game to Jalen Brunson. And Philadelphia is equipped defensively to deal better with Jalen Brunson. That, to me, is priority 1.
I think they'll go back to Oubre.
Here's where, to me, sweat equity means a lot. When you look at the New York Knicks' 4 best players, Towns, Brunson, OG, Mikal Bridges, they played 900 minutes in the regular season together. The 4 best players for the 76ers, Edgecombe, Maxey, Paul George, and Embiid, 360. You don't know each other well enough. We can talk all this stuff about Joel Embiid getting the bigs in foul trouble. You know who we didn't see at all in the first quarter? Tyrese Maxey. That's their best player. That is the guy who drives this. Their athleticism helped them against the Celtics. It opened up things for Joel Embiid. and they negated themselves by trying to force Joel Embiid the ball. That's why you have a mismatched roster of players whose skills don't completely complement each other, and they don't have the experience to know it. They don't have the experience.
Yeah, but they had the experience in Boston in Game 7 because Maxey got the ball three straight times and took it to the rack 3 straight times, layup, 2 free throws. But that's the fact. So they gotta go to that. They gotta take advantage of a guy. They know he's the best player in a sustainable way on that team. You don't disagree with that?
No, I don't disagree with you.
But the one thing I will give you this, I think, for whatever it's worth, whether you call it the minutes restriction, the mindfulness, the conceded loss, scheduled loss, I think that was apparent. What you saw from Philly was far from their best. And as much as the stats have been fantastic right now, Wendy, and I know you can attest to this, if the Knicks go cold from 3, it goes to hell in a handbasket very quickly. And so there's this little thing right now that Philly, if they can turn it up defensively, I have this series going 7, and I'm with the Knicks.
Monica is talking from the experience of a person who watched this team play all year long, and they had some highs, maybe not this high. No one's ever been this high, but they had highs and then they had lows. I want to make sure I'm understanding what you're saying. Is Tyrese Maxey the most important player on the floor tonight?
Yes.
Yes, that's why I agree.
We don't disagree on that.
Tyrese Maxey has to be the difference.
And I understand your point about the Celtics, but the bigs were Luka Garza and Neemias Queta, not Mitchell Robinson and Karl Anthony Towns, who Joel Embiid also has to pay attention to on defense.
But to Monica's point, if he can get them in foul trouble early, that will make a big difference. And I will go back to it. I think Maxey, when these teams played 2 years ago, Wendy, and you said yesterday, look, there's so many different characters in this era. Paul George wasn't there, and the Knicks have made a bunch of changes. But the one guy who remains is Tyrese Maxey. He was the best player in that series 2 years ago, and he's going to need to be that tonight. Wendy, finish it up.
Yeah, when they're at their best, it's both Maxey and Embiid working together. The challenge was that in the end of that Celtics series, those last 3 games, the Sixers played straight through Embiid. It was old school, dump the ball down into the basket and ride the big man. That's not how they're going to be able to play here. They've got to have a symbiosis. Maxey was just throwing the ball down into him and just letting him work. He's got to get back to running the floor. And I would expect Nick Nurse to stagger them more. He had stretches in Game 1 where they were both out of the game. He knows better than that. He'll have Maxey with built-in times. 2 years ago, they both averaged over 30. They can do that again in this series against the Knicks.
Yeah, there isn't any obvious reason to think this is going to be this one-sided. No. Now, strange things happen in
There's
playoff.
every reason to think it won't be for anybody paying attention to the history of playoff basketball. And I'm sorry to say this, sitting here, the history of the Knicks.
That's right.
No shade, though, Wilbon, because I give Mike Brown his credit. Mike Brown, Nick Nurse have history from that Raptors-Warriors series.
Sure.
Nick Nurse is very creative and willing to throw whatever he got to do out there to make it happen.
All right, so we'll look ahead to Game 2 tonight. Much more on that as we go. Meanwhile, we also had a Game 2 last night in the NHL. We had the Wild and the Avalanche going at it. Avs up 1-0 in the series. Can they be beat? So far, the answer seems to be no. Early first period, no score. Keep an eye on Nathan McKinnon and Martin Necas as they bring it up, a little give-and-go action. Look at the beautiful movement. All 5 Wild defenders surrounding Necas as he gets it off through traffic.